Welcome to the Business Development Podcast, brought to you by the Global Business Development Association, delivering the strategies and tactics to boost your career and corporate growth.
Hello, BD pros, and welcome to the Global Business Development Association podcast called What is Business Development? And boy, I tell you, wouldn't it be great if you had a way to really boost your sales? I mean, what if business development wasn't about chasing leads? What if it was about attracting the right clients? What if you could transform your BD strategy from reactive to proactive and make intentional engagements that align your brand with your audience? Well, we have a fantastic guest today to talk about that. But before we jump into it, why don't you grab yourself a copy of the Business Development Body of Knowledge? And that body of knowledge is what we use to enable business developers to become business development professionals certified through the Global Business Development Association. And grab your copy of the book and be able to take the exam, the BDP certification exam. And one other thing, if you're listening to this podcast, give us a like, give us a review on the podcast socials. Love to get that. It enables us to allocate resources to bring more great shows to you and more great books and book authors like we're going to do today. Today, we're talking about this new book, Beyond Order Makers. And it's how target marketing, branding, and business development can enable entrepreneurs for success. And it's written by our guest today, Alison Mullins. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about the book. It helps you learn how to shift from reactive selling tactics to proactive and creating genuine connections and increasing sales. And it includes secrets to crafting a killer brand strategy, the foundation of sales, and manifestation selling. Now, this sounds really interesting. A powerful new perspective on setting sales goals to create an infallible pipeline. And finally, it talks about the role of the human element and selling. And we have a wonderful human here joining us today, Alison Mullins, the author of the book. She's a seasoned sales, marketing, and business development professional specializing in the natural stone and surfaces industry with deep expertise across trend analysis, sales strategy, management, product development, and brand positioning. Alison Mullins, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tony. You give the best introductions. That's amazing.
Well, thank you, Alison. It's easy to give great introductions when we have such fantastic authors like yourself. You're a practitioner and a scholar in business development. You've been doing this for a while, and so I'm really excited about jumping into the details of the book. But first, if you can share some details about your origin story. How did you get into business development, and why did you write the book?
Well, my origin story really started out in sales and also with a passion for marketing. So, I have a degree in marketing from Radford University in fashion merchandising. And, I'm one of those people that is really trial by fire. So, I'm certainly not the best planner in the world, but through my work experiences over the years, in 2016, I got an opportunity to go work for a large company in Verona, Italy, that really changed the trajectory of outside selling for me and what it means to be in business development. I didn't know I was getting really into business development at the time, but what I realized very quickly after working in that contract for a while is that I was so much more than just a salesperson, because there really were no transactions happening in that position. I was considered a marketing consultant, and everything that we did was developing the business throughout my territory was the entire eastern part of North America, and even helping to grow and train some people in Mexico. So the adventure that I like to call it of business development just sort of evolved from taking jobs, working them as hard as I could, realizing the deep connection between sales and marketing and how much branding takes a huge play in how we sell. And then honestly, the boots on the ground experience of tracking customers, finding people, organizing data, analyzing data, executing meeting requests, in-person selling techniques, co-oping and brand advertising, all of that came from literally boots on the ground experience. And so I couldn't wait to try to help people who are like me, entrepreneurs, and want to kind of branch out and maybe start something of their own and get started. And I feel like I got all the tools from simple experience.
Yeah, well, that sounds like the common pathway for a lot of people who are in business development these days. They just kind of figured out a way to get into it, whether it was through marketing, sales. Your pathway, I think, is unique, and so many different business developers have unique backgrounds. And it's really interesting to see that now we're finally getting to a place with folks like yourself and other thought leaders really pulling together knowledge and things like your book, Beyond Order Makers, that really enable business developers to learn the deep tactics to be able to succeed in our profession. And I always tell people, look, you can read the business development body of knowledge. That will give you competency. But that 300-page book, when I wrote it, could have been 600 pages if I include all the deep tactics that you need to succeed in BD. So let's talk tactics here. Let's jump into your book. And I know it's divided into 3 primary sections, so this might stack nicely for our talk about the different tactics today. But what's tactic number 1 that you'd like to talk about?
So tactic number 1 is to map your customer and map your market. So I'm a firm believer in mind mapping. That's going to be a solid trend that you'll hear me repeat kind of over and over again. I'm a visual learner. I'm a visual analyst, and I need visual mediums in order to see my path. And I think that most of your audience might, align with that perspective. So mapping, mind mapping, is one of the things that I started with my first book. And then in this book, I really took it to a whole nother level of how a young entrepreneur could truly map out exactly how they're going to sell this service, this product, this invention, this tactic that they have decided to come to market with. So first and foremost, I have to give credit where credit is due. I also had a coach early on starting Rep Methods business who took me down another level of language in marketing. And I want to say Katie White, she owns a company called Strong Brand Social. And I always give credit because some of the tactics, and I give credit in the book about the finding your target persona and establishing your UVP. Those were not things that I learned with my marketing degree in college. These were things that were not discussed. Social media was not around when I was in college. And analyzing from a social perspective in marketing really came from me having a coach and someone helping to direct it. And then it was like the light bulb came on for me because that completely aligned with the octopus diagrams and the items that I was already doing when it comes to finding customers and building a sales portfolio and helping to establish that pipeline. So the short answer is define as deeply and as amicably as possible to the deepest psychographic level, not just demographics, but psychographic level of that. Who is your customer? What did you create this product for? What service are you offering? And when I say Katie taught me to get down, I'm talking about where do they eat dinner on Friday nights? Do they go to some kind of an organized religion on the weekends? Where do they spend their quality time? Do they have a family? That technique of actually definition of one persona, not a category. This is not a group, but finding that one persona is a huge element in truly creating a vision on how you're going to sell and market your business.
Yeah, wow, I really like that one. And let's just deep dive it just a little bit here.
Sure.
I'm curious to know what you mean by octopus diagrams, but I do this as well. I think this is extremely profound, and it demands, I think, a lot of empathy to really try and put yourself in your prospect's shoes, your ideal customer profile persona's shoes. And I assume when you're talking about that persona, you're really thinking about the decision maker, right? Like if
Yeah.
because some people are in consumer, low intent threshold product areas. Some are in high intent threshold areas. High intent threshold means they need a lot of trust because it's a complex solution. It's a complex product. It's perhaps probably pretty risky. So they need a high degree of trust before they make a purchase. But I think what you're saying is identify your decision maker and really put yourself in their shoes, right?
Yes, absolutely. Putting yourself in the shoes, envision, get involved with who that customer is and what they do for a living. And it is a primary decision maker. It's also just really what I call the singular perfect client. So if you have a process, if you have a multi uh, purpose sales tactic, many different devices within your business on how you actually achieve revenue. So picturing how does that target persona walk through the sales process with you? How are they going to buy your product and services? Is it multiple things? Is it a one-time transaction? You have to kind of envision the perfect consumer that's going to eat up everything that you have to offer. And in my case, it's a multiple purchase process over the course of a year or 2 years or 3 years. It's a lifelong customer. So really walking that line and finding all the details about that person, because those details matter. They really help you map where are you going to be spending your marketing dollars. Where are you going to be placing visual aids so that they see you, so that they hear you, so that they find your business? How do you craft your sales pitch, which is the next part, my big tactic number 2. But so deep diving into that customer is the beginning of everything.
Yeah, I love this deep diving and mapping your ideal customer persona. So critical. And I really like what you said, Allison, because so many people just stop at, well, we'll figure out where they read their content. We'll figure out where they go to dinner,
Later.
right? But they don't think, so many people don't think like business developers. And you're talking just like a business developer. You're playing through the entire customer journey, not just going up through prospecting and the conversion phase. You're going through, okay, so once I have that
Life
relationship
cycle.
with them, what do they really love from me and what will they need? And then what will compel them to buy more from me? And giving credit to one of our guests that we've had on the show a couple of times, Andrew Z. Brown, is will they give you ideal referrals to other ideal,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, this is, folks, business development. Here's the textbook definition. It's customer and community advocacy that creates corporate growth. We advocate for them. We have the empathy to understand everything about them, what they need, what they want, where they eat dinner. And in turn, they will advocate for us and give us the referrals that lead to exponential growth. So, wow, so exciting, Allison. I can't wait to jump into tactic number 2 here.
Yes. So tactic number 2 for me is teaching about crafting the right message. Practicing the sales pitch is a topic that I went down deeply in my first book. And in the second book, when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's talks a lot more and deep diving into the art of storytelling. So I don't believe in sales pitches that are dry and simply about like the highlights of a product or a service. I identify and I try to teach people who follow my path about the art of storytelling and how really the relatability between that consumer purchase and or service purchase or long-term customer retention policy is going to be based on the aligning of some kind of a story of a passion of hitting someone in their mindset. And so mapping your message, taking some time to really craft, not only through some of the diagramming techniques, but once you have that target persona, you can then begin to identify networking groups, co-oping opportunities with other businesses, the marketing dollars and the advertising spend. And then at that point, you can create the messages and really streamline, what is my value proposition? What is it that I'm offering to this different group, person, consumer level? So,
Yeah, I love
craft.
the power of stories. Yeah, I mean, craft, it's not a pitch, it's a story. You're telling a story. And we've talked about this a number of times. It's in the business development body of knowledge as a fundamental skill for all business developers. It's storytelling. Somebody asked me the other day, what do you think is going to happen with AI and what will humans be when it does everything humans will do? And I said, we'll end up doing what we've done for millennia. We will be sitting around a campfire and we will be telling stories covering each other's back, right? High trust, storytelling. This is how we learn. Humans love storytelling. I mean, there's tremendous neuroscience in this, where storytelling is fundamental to human learning. It triggers neurochemicals that boost recall, that boost excitement, and we're telling stories about what their journey can look like, but we're also telling stories about what others have achieved, and we call those use cases. But if you do the use cases correctly, you're telling a story, right, Alison?
Yeah, case studies are incredibly important because if I feel like whenever I speak in front of an audience and I use my case studies in that particular element of teaching, whatever message I'm trying to convey at the time, that's when the light bulb comes on for everybody in the audience, because once they actually can apply and see the practical principles that you're trying to sell them on through the eyes of an actual use, I feel like the relatability is just magnified at that point. And I also wanted to throw in that storytelling and mapping your message, it's not just about words, it's also about colors, logos, icons. It's about those visual elements that really tie your brand to your message. And I feel like, again, if this is step 2 in your BD process, it perfectly aligns with what you've already achieved through tactic number 1.
Yeah, well, and you talk about things that sometimes business developers find a little bit, it's come on, why do I always have to follow the brand guidelines? Use these colors, use this logo. Can't I just grab it off of the website and use it? No, you can't, because as
No.
you just said, Allison, those are fundamental to creating the entire story. Imagine your favorite storybook, and each time it's different characters and different colors and everything else. You won't remember it, right? Yeah, you won't remember it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's really about creating that lifelong and memorable process, and keeps you aligned. It keeps you getting those referrals. It's what is going to stick in the customer's brain for the longest amount of time.
Yeah, and when you're aligning the pitch, your unique value proposition with the story, how do you actually do that? Are you crafting the UVP first and then the story? How are you doing that?
Well, that's a really great question, because I talk about that in section 1 of the book. Honestly, it's a bounce back, and Katie's team taught me that you really have to work on one, and then you got to bounce to the other, and then you might uncover some nuances that maybe you didn't see before. Then you go back and bounce. So it's really a play, a very careful dance between the two items, and it takes a while. I offer, to write business development strategies and brand strategies for people through another business model. And I often tell people that it can take up to 6 months to really do this process correctly, because you have to also chalk in some competitive analysis of what else is in the marketplace. So as a true BD person, that isn't something that is going to be I don't think you're going to have the right answer in 5 minutes. You have to plan to craft this, to work on it, and to also do a lot of analytical assessment of what exists in the marketplace, especially that competitive advantage. Super important to take those things into perspective before you say, okay, hands off, I've got this answer now. And you can roll with it for probably 1 to 2 years. The way that business evolves, people evolves. I mean, you mentioned AI. That's a great example of like, oh my gosh, like 5 years ago, AI was not something that I was even thinking about incorporating into some of my BD strategies, right? So as the people and the human race is evolving very quickly, a good brand strategy theoretically should last you 2 to 5 years, but honestly, it depends on that product or the service, because we seem to be a very fast-moving society.
Yeah, we are. And, I like what you said about it's evolutionary, and you're taking in other factors that often people don't consider, which is competitive intelligence. And who better than for business developers who are talking to prospects every day, telling the story every day? You can give feedback to the marketing team to say, hey, look, that story's not resonating anymore.
That's right.
People are tired of it, or it's not different. It's not different than what others are telling. So really exciting stuff, Alison. Okay, let's roll right into number 3.
Sure. So number 3 really has to do with more on the sales process. So I'm sticking with the mapping trend, and I'm saying that my tactic number 3 is to find and map your sales process. So if you're in BD or you're an entrepreneur listener who's just trying to get some great ideas, if you want to start a business, you've got to have an understanding of what all of this information is then going to translate to an adequate sales process. And that starts from the lead generation, from the marketing, from like the early stages where you're trying to attract, and all the way through the pillars of the closing of the sale, the retention, the referrals, and even through the problem solving.
I like that. I like that. And so you're talking about mapping out the entire prospect journey from awareness, when marketing catches their attention, and through the activation phase, where we typically call that prospecting phase, where business developers are starting to engage and communicate with the prospectors, to the sales conversion phase, where typically a sales team gets involved with the business developers and you convert them into a client. So you're talking about mapping out that entire prospect journey, right?
Yes, and I like to also talk about like a customer decision tree. That's a very helpful mind mapping tool to kind of get you started in the frame of reference that I'm referring to. So a customer decision tree, you've mapped out who that customer is, you've mapped up how you're going to talk to that customer, how you're going to reach that customer, where you're going to align with that customer, but then you've also got to decide, well, what is it going to look like when I finally either have somebody on the hook and they're considering purchasing from me? If the answer is yes, what do I do then? If the answer is no, where do I go from here? This is going to help a true BD professional align, their follow-up process, their rebuttal process, their transactional process, their billing procedures. Mapping out the sales process is like, for me, ta-da, the gateway into truly activating and rolling. That's when I call it like, you're ready to roll. You're ready to spend the time, map your time. And, to be honest, I talk a lot about time management in all of my books. And if you don't have some of these clues and some of this decisiveness mapped out in advance, then you're going to get lost, right? We're going to get lost in the day to day and the week to the week. And so time management elements are something that's going to come in, and this is going to help you have a clear perspective of where you should be spending your time, and making sure that you're spending some of that time in sales, because I hate to tell you this, but that is one of the many mistakes that I see between both salespeople who are in that reactive cycle, and also business owners, right? You've got this amazing product, but there's so much more to owning a business, and you have to actually carve out time for prospecting, for lead generation, for keeping that pipeline rolling.
Yeah, you definitely do. And I really like what you said about mapping out those next best actions, the decision tree you talk about, so that you can help guide your prospects through the journey.
That's right.
You know, oftentimes they say fortune is in the follow-ups. And some follow-ups are just, well, lame, right? It's, well, we'll follow up with you in 2 weeks. Why? Why are you following up with me in 2 weeks?
What's your
As opposed
ask?
to, exactly, what's the ask is, and I always like to say, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. Here's what I recommend we do next. Okay, we're going to do X, Y, Z, and we're going to come back. I need a decision, or I need further information from you in 2 weeks. And this is exactly, and then after that, the next step. And here's the reason why we're taking those next steps. And this is why it will be beneficial to you. Wow, Alison, there is so much packed into your book. I can talk hours with you about this.
Thank you.
And I really like how you laid it out into 3 key components. And just to summarize for folks listening here, the key number 1 tactic or takeaway from Alison's book is map out your ideal customer persona. Understand everything about them. Be very empathetic about what they need, what they want, what they do, where they live, where they think, what they eat even. Really put yourself in their shoes to understand them. Be as empathetic as possible. Tactic number 2 is, map out that, not the pitch, but the story. Map out the stories that you will tell, because someday they will become a story that you can tell other prospects. Hey, let me tell you the story about how I helped one of your competitors do XYZ. Oh, that's interesting. I remember that story. I want to be the hero of that story. Great. And you know what? I will walk you through that story in tactic number 2, which is map out your prospect's journey. Next best actions every step along the way, so that you can be proactive as opposed to reactive. Map, map, map. Tactic number 1, tactic number 2, tactic number 3. Hey, those listening, if you want to map out a way to improve your business development game, then check out Alison's book. It's Beyond Order Makers. It's available on Amazon. Let's see, right now it's on Kindle for $9.95. You can get it on paperback and hardcover. Grab yourself a copy there. And Alison, how can folks follow your work and connect with you?
Oh, thank you. And I also just want to mention there's an index, which is like the best part of the book. Anyway.
I love an index.
I love an index.
Where did those go? Yeah, I just didn't have the time or the discipline to put an index in the BD box. So hats off to you for doing that. That's fantastic.
Yes. But anyway, you can find me. I have a website at Rep Methods, REPMETHODS. And that's where you can find a lot of information, books, anything that I'm doing in the community. And I'm also on most social media channels, Instagram, Facebook. Primarily, I do not participate in TikTok, unfortunately, but it's at Rep Methods. So I'll see you on the inside, and please feel free to reach out to me at any time.
Well, Alison Mullins, thank you so much for everything you do for the business development profession and sharing your incredible insights with us today.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you for listening to the Business Development Podcast. Join our free community of corporate partners and business development professionals advancing the art, science, and ethics of the business development profession at gbdassociation.org.